We are continuing our study in the Gospel of Matthew, and as we begin to move through chapter 8, take note how the spirit of things is changing. In the words of the classic 1960s folk song, the times are a changing. And within Jesus' ministry, there is a change afoot. We are going to be reading from Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 to 25. A key moment, a key event as things begin to change. Then he got into a boat and started across the lake with his disciples. Suddenly, a terrible storm came up with waves higher than the boat, but Jesus was asleep. The disciples went to him and wakened him, shouting, "Lord, save us! We are sinking!" The Sea of Galilee is notorious for the squalls that suddenly come up on it. Now, the Sea of Galilee is actually a relatively small freshwater lake, where at the top of the lake, the hills and mountains, so to speak, direct wind in such a way it can create particularly nasty and violent storms. The Sea of Galilee is an important geographical feature in the Galilee of Jesus' day. Remember that in the first century that transportation options were not like ours. So one of the advantages of a lake, by relative terms, relative to that day and age, is that it would provide quick transportation relative to that day and age. If we were to go through the gospel accounts, we have several accounts of Jesus crossing this body of water. In fact, there are probably other occasions when Jesus crossed the lake which are not recorded in the gospels. In other words, we have what was a very common event, which was transformed by what the disciples saw and experienced that day. When we come to Matthew chapter 8, the work of ministry of Jesus is no longer new. The disciples had spent time with Jesus and were exposed to some of what he could do. And reading what happened on the Sea of Galilee, it is important to put that in this context. The disciples have been seeing Jesus as some unique servant of God. They had not been seeing Jesus as the incarnate Son of God. They had been seeing Jesus and not really perceiving who Jesus was. In the brief moment that he silenced the storm, he challenged the disciples in what they were believing about Jesus. You see, these people thought they knew who Jesus was and would now spend the rest of their time with Jesus trying to figure out who this person really was. I have no reason to believe the disciples were stupid. You see, what happened on the lake did not just have consequences for that moment of time, it would impact their future with him. It was also something that I believe changed the way they viewed the past. They had heard Jesus preach and teach. They had seen Jesus heal people. They had seen and experienced Jesus' encounter with the demonic. There was no way after that boat ride they could remember things as they were. I'm not saying at that moment all changed just like that. You know what? It does not work that way in life. Rarely does one event transform us so completely and totally. I think rather in the days and weeks ahead, these disciples would recall an event and go, "Oh, that's what he meant." Or, "Oh, that was where he was coming from." In the journey of faith, we will have moments when our understanding of who and what Jesus is will be revolutionized. Now, I'm not saying we will all be out in a boat, but I am saying that something will happen that will forever change how we view Jesus. It is a moment when we cannot go back to a simpler Jesus. Remember that Jesus was trying to get his disciples to the point where they would see he had to die on a cross if he were to be the Savior of the world. You see, if we never grow in our understanding of who Jesus is, we will never understand who we are. A simpler Jesus is better For a simpler Jesus is far less demanding of me. A simpler Jesus makes easy believism possible. We need to understand that there is always a personal cost for a deeper understanding of who Jesus is. May we have that faith that calls us ever deeper in our understanding of who he is and what he requires of us.